Hello everyone, my name is Evan, and welcome to my video guide for the New Game Plus speedrun in Xenoblade Chronicles 2. As of this recording, I hold the world record in this category, and I'm making this guide so that you can perform the same run yourself, should you wish to do so. This guide will cover everything that you need to do before starting your run, so that mostly includes your party setup, but there's also a few other things that you need to do to prepare. I should mention that there is also a written version of this guide, and that can be found in the description and on the speedrun.com page for Xenoblade 2. Before we start, I want to give a shout out to Hybrid, who made the original guide and route that was used as a base for this one. I also want to give a shout out to Gren for helping with the routing and a lot of the finer details for the setup. If you haven't seen a New Game Plus run before, you should know that it's mostly just walking from location to location. This is because at this point we're already super overpowered and most fights don't last more than a few seconds. That said, there are still faster ways to do those fights than others, so we still need to plan accordingly. Still, since most of the run is just walking, your movement lines are going to be far more important than usual. This guide won't show the actual run, but I recommend watching the current world record to learn the best movement. Anyway, this guide will show what I believe to be the best setup for this run. If you believe you know of something that may work better, please let me know so I can try it out. Alright, let's get started with the prerequisites for the run. Okay, so not all of this is going to be strictly necessary, but I recommend doing as much of this as you're willing to so that your run can go as smoothly as possible. I will try to explain, once I get to everything, why things are the way that I have them here, and try to explain just how important they are so you can decide for yourself whether or not you want to bother with it. But anyway, first of all, the first thing you want to do is make sure that all of your drivers are at level 99. So you can see we have Nia, Tora, Morag, Zeke all at 99. The exception is Rex, and you're going to have him at level 97 instead. The reason for this is because of a skip that we can do in Chapter 2, that saves about 3 seconds and is extremely easy as long as you have Rex at level 97. So all you have to do is before starting a run, just go to an inn, level Rex down to 97. That's about it. Next, you're going to want to max out the affinity charts of all of your drivers. This includes both their overt affinity and their hidden affinity. Again, I'm sure a lot of these skills don't actually do anything that help. I have not personally confirmed that. Honestly, I recommend just filling out the entire chart, and that's for all of your drivers. Next is ideas. These are going to be pretty tough to raise for most of your drivers, so I would understand you not wanting to do all of these completely. Of course, I recommend just filling all of them out to level 10 for all of them. Really, the only ones that you strictly need at level 10 it's going to be Compassion for Rex, because you're going to be using Herald, which is an electric type most of the time. Bravery for Nia. Justice for Tora. Morag, you don't really need anything, because she doesn't do a whole lot. And Justice for Zeke. And also maybe Bravery and Justice for Rex, since Pyra and Mithra are both used for one fight each, if I remember correctly. Let's also talk real quick about the temporary party members. So you're going to have Vandam in Chapter 3, you're going to have Jin in Chapter 8, and then technically there's also Jin and Malice in Chapter 1. Jin and Malice in Chapter 1, don't do anything with them, it's not worth it. They are extremely difficult to level up, and it's really not going to do anything for you. For Vandam in Chapter 8 Jin, most likely you're really not going to have to do anything either. They don't do a whole lot in this run most of the time, pretty much all of the time. You're going to be able to kill the enemy before they can get any hits off, so you really can ignore them. You don't really need to worry about them. If you so choose, you can level both Vandam and Chapter 8 Jin up to level 99 pretty easily. So if you're looking for something extra to do, I would go ahead and do that, but it's really not a big deal. You can also buy a bunch of ultimate weaponry at the inn in Alba Cavendish in Moradane to level Vandam's arts all the way up. So that's something that I did myself, but it's really not going to be necessary for this. Alright, next let's talk about some of the items that you're going to need. First thing you want to do is buy 8 different shop deeds from different shops across Allrest. 5 of these are going to increase your running speed by 5%, up to a total of a 25% increase in your running speed, which is going to be crucial for this run, considering, of course, you're trying to go fast as possible, and there's a whole lot of running in this run, so you definitely need these. And 3 of them are going to reduce the terrain damage by 10%, up to a total of 30%. And this, combined with the running speed increase, is going to allow you to run through some of the steam vents that you encounter without having to turn them off, so that's going to save a little bit of time as well. So it's going to be 8 deeds in total, and these are going to be from Soniaris Music in Torgoth, Tilly Bakery in Torgoth, Hobby Knickknacks in Fonsamima, Aquanese Cosmetics in Fonsamima, Haskafel Books in Alba Cavendish, Coral Leaf Fresh Fish in Fonset, Speck Butchers in Fonset, and Biblio, Polio, and Theosaur. So once you have all of those, there's a few other items you're going to need as well. First, you're going to need one premium cylinder per run. You do not technically need the premium cylinder. However, during the one salvage that you do, if you get more than 2 encounters that spawn after the salvage, or if you get 2 or more encounters, you're going to lose time. So I recommend just keeping a premium cylinder, and you can just scroll up one and select the premium cylinder. You could do this with the golden cylinder, it's just a little bit riskier. I would highly recommend not using the normal cylinder or silver cylinder, but that's going to be completely up to you. Next, you're going to need 3 bion connectors per run. There are 2 different ways that you can get these. The first is by salvaging in Gormott. I would not recommend doing it this way, since it's going to take you a long time, it's going to be expensive. Yeah, it's kind of inefficient. The other way to get them is by buying them during the quest in Chapter 2 that you need them for. The problem with this is that you can only buy them during that quest. So if you have 3 bion connectors already, it'll complete the quest instantly and you won't be able to buy any. So I recommend selling all of them now, starting a practice run, getting to that point in the story, and then just buying 99 of them, finishing that run, and then starting after that. That would be my recommendation. Next, you're going to need 10 puzzle tree wood per run. I recommend just putting 3 forestry blades into your party, going to the Nuclea timber site over and over, and just using that collection point to constantly get a ton of them. I recommend just stocking up on a ton all at once in case you're going to want to do more runs in the future. Next, a couple of pouch items. You're going to need 2 copies of Love Beyond the Clouds and 1 bottle of Sparkly Snow perfume. These are not going to be strictly necessary. You probably don't need them 100%, but you're going to have a little bit of downtime during the Merc mission in Chapter 4, so I recommend at least getting 1 or 2 of these to be able to put onto your drivers. Yeah, there's also a couple of items that you're going to need to buy during the run, and you're going to need to just make sure that you have room in your inventory for these. You're going to need 2 butterfly lenses to make sure that you have 97 or fewer of those when you start your run. You're going to need 1 glitter bake, so make sure that your inventory is not full on that, and you're going to need 1 grilled anchor tail, so make sure your inventory is not full on that. That's pretty much everything you need in terms of that. Next, you're going to want to make sure to defeat any unique monsters that you might cross paths with during the run. I have not personally confirmed which of these ones can actually see you, but I would just defeat all of these just to make sure, because the last thing you want is one of them targeting you during a run and either killing you or blocking you from being able to open a door or something like that. So I'm just going to run through all of these real quick in the order that you would encounter them during the run. If you want to see this list, click in the link in the description to see the written guide. And yeah, so I'm just going to run through them here. Sad Bernard, Territorial Rotbart, Sniping Brent, Acute Melvin, Walker Trap, Marshall Cameron, Tattooed Hugo, Jadeite Polly, Confiscator Jimmy, Skyfist Remington, Vile Howard, Glamorous Alfred, Holy Lancer Ephraim, Machine Gun Julio, Evil Eye Mambor, Crimson Derek, Mark 6 Margot, Haywire Phoebus, Praetorian Medea, and Mark 6 Geralf. You're going to want to make sure to take all of those out because they could get in your way during the run. If you're feeling up to it, I would also recommend taking down Mark 7 Arak here, which is a level 114 super boss. It's not necessary, but this tombstone right here could be used for positioning yourself during the Jin fight in Chapter 9. This one's definitely not necessary, but if you feel like you can take it down, I would recommend doing so. Alright, next we're going to talk about what accessories you need on each of your drivers. In general, we're going to be maximized for damage on the drivers that actually attack. So for Rex, we're going to have an Enlightened Loincloth, a Cannon Attachment, and an Abyss Mask. This is just maximizing him for damage as much as possible. You can use lower versions of these accessories, but they're not going to be as effective. I would recommend trying to use these versions if possible. Nia, an Abyss Mask, an Axe Attachment, and a Crimson Headband. We're using a Crimson Headband instead of a Glamorous Swimsuit because Dagus, who Nia is going to be using, has a pretty high critical rate. Same is going to go for Tora. He's going to get a Crimson Headband instead of the Loincloth because Poppy Cutie Pie has a pretty high critical rate. Again, Abyss Mask and Saber Attachment, since that's the weapon Tora is going to be using mostly. From Morag, this doesn't really matter much. I've got a Crimson Headband on her, as well as a Platinum Nopal Mask and a Gargantuan Feather. These really don't matter, honestly. I have these two on her just to possibly draw away aggro during the fight with Aishma's core, but really I don't think that actually does anything. Crimson Headband, I guess, is to do slightly extra damage should it be needed, but really these could be anything. For Zeke, again, just maximize her damage. We got the Enlightened Glowing Cloth, an Abyss Mask, and a Cannon attachment because he is going to be using Cosmos. So yeah, that's what we've got as far as accessories. Alright, now is the big one. Now is when we're going to start talking about all of the blades that we have and the equipment that we have on each of these. I really recommend that you follow this as closely as possible, because things could get kind of screwed up if you don't. First of all, we have Rex here. He's going to have a few blades that he's going to switch between throughout the run, so I'm going to go through all of those first. Our main blade that we're going to use is going to be Herald. Herald needs to actually be engaged on Rex. She cannot be engaged on somebody else to then be brought over to Rex using the Master Driver ability, because Rex does not have access to the Master Driver ability at the beginning of the game. So you're going to need to get an overdrive protocol to move Herald onto Rex, and that actually might be a problem because in the end game you can't do that. So you may very well have to start a new run in New Game Plus, move Herald over to Rex during the game, and then finish the game before you can start another run again. Anyway, the reason we use Herald is because of a skill that Herald has, which deals an extra 200% more damage at max affinity. And that's going to be very helpful to us. So that's the reason that we use Herald instead of Cosmos or Shiva or any of the other cannon blades. As far as equipment to have on her, we're going to use a Moon Matter chip. Where is it? There it is. Because that is going to have the highest auto attack and critical rate, more or less, and the lowest block rate, because block rate we really don't care about, because we're not actually getting hit much, if at all, during this run. For Aux cores, we're going to want Affinity Max Attack 6, Outdoor Attack up 6, and Opening Art 6. And that's going to allow us to deal as much damage as possible with the first art that we use, and also just in general, though most fights we only need one art for anyway. Next up is Mithra. Mithra and Pyra we're going to use for one fight each during the run, but also they're pretty much required to be on Rex during this run. You kind of can't take them off, and they're going to be forced onto Rex at certain points, so we need to make sure that they're outfitted as well to be able to hit us. We're going to use a Moon Matter chip again for both Mithra and Pyra. Both of these things, everything that I say here is going to apply to both of them. A Moon Matter chip, and for Aux cores we're going to use Opening Art and Outdoor Attack. You're going to need to set these for both of them. So yeah, just keep that in mind. Next we're going to have an Ether Mod Common Blade on Rex. This might seem a little bit confusing, but we need Rex to be able to deal as much damage as possible, and normal rare blades only have ether mods of up to 20%, whereas common blades could have a mod of up to 24%. And that extra percentage we really want to have for Rex to make sure that he's dealing as much damage as possible. So this blade here has an ether mod of 23%. 24% would be ideal, but 23% is perfectly fine. So you're going to want to keep pulling some common blades so you can get a blade with an ether mod of 23%, or up to 24%, somewhere in 20 to 24, something like that. You also need to make sure that their weapon is either a Mega Lance or an Ether Cannon, and that's kind of important. And the reason for that is because the core chip that you want to give them is going to increase their dexterity. If they have a Mega Lance, you want to give them an Amethyst chip. If they have a Ether Cannon, you want to give them a Pentagon chip. And that's going to have an extra effect that increases Rex's dexterity by 50, which is going to be very useful. And for Aux cores, we're going to put Hunter's Chemistry 5 and Shoulder to Shoulder 5 on them. These are the cores that we're going to give to every blade that is in the party but not actually used in combat at any point. And this just passively increases affinity with whatever blade that driver has out. So yeah, that's that. Also for Rex, let's see here, we're going to need Rock. We're going to need the Wind Knuckle.
Sure it'll work out great.
So for Rock, Rock is going to be forced onto Rex during Chapter 4. We don't use him for very long, but we just want to make sure he's in the party. I put a magnet chip on Rock to increase strength. I don't think that really does anything. We probably don't need that. But it was one of the only things that actually had an extra effect that did anything, so yeah, I used that instead. No aux cores on Rock. That is because the aux cores get removed when Rock switches drivers from Phantom to Rex, so anything that you put in here is just going to disappear, so leave this blank. Then there is the Wind Knuckle. This is the blade that you get from the unnamed core crystal in Chapter 2. You're stuck with this blade. There's nothing you can do with it. You can't release it, and you're going to be forced to have it in your party for a little while. So I put an Albright chip on her. It really doesn't matter. Agility's not going to do much, but none of these extra effects really do a whole lot anyway. Again, doesn't really matter. I put Hunter's Chemistry on her. If you have a second aux core slot, use Shoulder to Shoulder as well. I got unlucky. There's nothing you can do if you only have one aux core slot. It's fine. Yeah, that's pretty much all we've got for that. Then we're also going to need Godfrey and Wulfric.
It sounds fun.
These two are just going to be used later on to give Rex extra affinity. I'm going to put Hunter's Chemistry and Shoulder to Shoulder on both of them. On Godfrey, we're going to use a Sunlight chip, although this one doesn't really matter. This just increases maximum HP, doesn't do a whole lot. On Wulfric, we use an Amethyst chip to increase dexterity. That one is important. We definitely want that. These two also need to be engaged on Rex. That's the case for the this Ether Common as well. They both need to be engaged on Rex. It's not strictly necessary, but the reason for that is because if they are not engaged on Rex and we go to engage another blade, we're going to get this little pop-up here that says engage blade that's bonded with another driver, whereas if they are bonded with Rex, it just switches to them immediately. And so we can skip that dialogue just by having them on Rex. So that's really the only reason that we do that. Alright, let me put Herald and Mithra back here. That's going to be pretty much it. You need to make sure that Herald, Mithra, and Pyra are both at S plus trust. You can see that it's at S plus trust there. Any blade that is actually used in combat at any point is going to need S plus trust, and I will point out who that is when I get there. So for Herald, for Mithra, and Pyra, you need S plus trust. For all of the other ones that I mentioned that are on Rex, you don't need S plus trust at all. Alright, moving on to Nia's blades. It's going to be a little bit more simple here because every driver just has 3 blades. Nia's going to be using Dagus most of the time because of Dagus' skill called Kaiser Zone, which increases damage and AoE for the entire party by 120%. That is going to be crucial, and we're going to want to have Dagus out as much as possible. Dagus is going to have a Moon Matter chip because he's used in fights, so we want a high attack, a high critical rate, and block rate isn't really important to us. He's going to have Night Vision 6, Massive Melee Mithra, and Opening Art 6 as his aux cores. Massive Melee Mithra just to increase his critical rate, because his critical rate is already very high. And Opening Art, just so that he can do extra damage. He's not actually used that much, but we do just want him to be able to get that damage in if necessary. Dagus needs to be at S plus trust, since he's used for the majority of this run. Dromark also should be at S plus trust. He's going to have Hunter's Chemistry and Shoulder to Shoulder, because he's not used very much during the run, only during 1 or 2 fights, so we don't need to worry too much about him. He's going to also have a Moon Matter chip, though. And then Nia is going to also have a Common Blade. This one's going to be a Dexterity mod Common. Again, as close to 24% as you can get it. Also with either a Lance or a Cannon as their weapon, and you're going to use an Amethyst chip if it's a Lance, Pentagon chip if it's a Cannon, to get that extra Dexterity boost. And this is also going to have Hunter's Chemistry and Shoulder to Shoulder as the aux cores. This one has a 3rd aux core slot. This does nothing for us because there's no core that we could put here that would actually have any effect, since they're just going to be in the background and not actually used in combat at any time. So I literally just left it blank because it actually does nothing for us. I'm going to skip Tora for a minute here. We're going to go back to Tora in a second. For Morag, we've got Petroka. Morag's really only going to be used for 2 fights in this entire run. That's going to be for the Ishma's core fight and for the Ion fight. And Petroka is going to be crucial for both of those because Petroka has a skill that increases damage when you're using the element that is opposite of the enemy that you were facing. And so for the Aishma's Core fight, we're going to be using Herald, which is an electric type, against Aishma's Core, which is an earth type, and that'll allow us to one-shot Aishma's Core instead of it taking longer. Same for the Ion fight, we'll be using Poppy QT Pi with a dark element against Ion, who's a light element, and so that's where that's coming from. So that's why we want to use Patroka. The weapon, we can't do anything with the core chip. We're not allowed to put core chips on there, so we just have to stick with that. And for Aux cores, we have an Affinity Max Attack, Outdoor Attack, and Opening Guard, just like we did with Herald, just to do as much damage as possible. These are far less important, because Morak doesn't actually do all that much damage. He's usually not able to get a hit off during either of these fights. So if there's anything that you're going to skimp on, it should be these right here, because you don't really need these. Next, we've got Zenobia, and this is going to be kind of an interesting one, because Zenobia really isn't strictly necessary. The only reason we're using her is because we need a Wind Blade. We're going to need 3 levels of Wind Mastery, which Zenobia has. Yeah, at some point. And so if one of your other common blades happens to be a Wind type, then you don't technically need her. But the reason I'm also including her is because she's an attacker type, so we get a slight damage increase that way. She has what's it called? You can use this core chip to increase critical damage, and she has a strength mod to slightly increase damage as well. None of these are strictly necessary, especially because it's Morag, and Morag isn't used for a lot of fights and doesn't do a whole lot. So honestly, you can really just use any blade here as long as they have 3 levels of Wind Mastery, and even then you don't really need this if you have Wind Mastery on another blade. Still, I just chose this one because it fits all of the criteria of a blade that you want to have in the background. Either way, you want to make sure you have Hunter's Chemistry and Shoulder to Shoulder on them. I have Machine Hunter here, but that's really not necessary because that doesn't do anything for us. So it's really just these two that you're going to want to make sure you have. And you're going to want to use a Tachyon chip to increase critical damage with the core chip. Next we got Brigid. Brigid has to be on Morag at some point during the game, so we just make sure that she's here. We use a Moon Matter chip on her. The reason for that is during the Ghost section, this is not confirmed. I think there is a chance that the Ghosts use the equipment of the actual party members, in which case we want to use a chip that decreases block rate by as much as possible so that they don't block our attacks. I have no idea if that's how it actually works, but that's just kind of an extra thing for me just to kind of make sure that that doesn't happen. But yeah, so I use a Moon Matter chip here, but it may not be strictly necessary. I'm not entirely sure. Again, Aux cores, Hunter's Chemistry, Shoulder to Shoulder. So yeah, that's going to be everything for Morag. For Zeke, he's going to be using Cosmos most of the time. You need Cosmos. Oh, by the way, I didn't mention, Patroka needs to be S plus Trust as well. Just mention that there. So does Cosmos. Cosmos needs to be S plus Trust. You need to have pulled Cosmos for this. Sorry if you have not done so. For Cosmos, we're going to want a Moon Matter chip just to deal extra damage. We're going to want Affinity Max Attack 6, Outdoor Attack Up, Opening Art 6, as normal, like for the rest of these, just to do as much damage as possible. Yep, that's that. I've got a Zombie on Zeke. This is another one that's really not necessary. I chose this because it is an attacker type, so it's doing some extra damage. It's an ether mod, so we can do extra damage with Cosmos' cannon. And I used an Albright chip on her to add 5 meters to the range of the ether cannon. I don't think this really makes a difference, but I haven't thoroughly tested whether or not it does, so this is just what I'm using. And then she's also got Hunter's Chemistry and Shoulder to Shoulder on her. Lastly, Pandoria, again, just needs to be on Zeke. I use a Moon Matter chip for the same reason as I use the Moon Matter chip on Brigid. And she's got Hunter's Chemistry and Shoulder to Shoulder as well. This does not need to be here because it doesn't actually do anything. And that is going to be it as far as all of that. Alright, next we're going to go over Poppy and what she needs. First of all, you're going to want to have all 3 forms of Poppy at S plus Trust. For Poppy QT, this isn't quite as necessary, but still she's used for a couple of fights, so we're going to want to make sure that she can get some damage in. Same thing with the core chips. I just use a Moon Matter chip on all 3 of them. For Poppy Alpha, that's for the same reason as Bridget and Pandoria. For Poppy QT Pi, that's absolutely essential because we need that critical rate and that auto attack to be up as high as possible. Block rate doesn't really matter so much. QT doesn't matter quite as much, but still we want to be able to get that damage in. Next, we're going to move on to Poppy Swap, and I'm just going to show the setup that we have for each of those. So for the roll CPU, we're going to use a Master Ether mod for Poppy Alpha. This is for the thing with the ghosts. We want to make sure that she doesn't have extra defense from a tank mod. We would normally use a muscle mod, but we're not able to do that for Poppy Alpha, so we got to settle just for the Ether mod. For the element core, we use Earth. This doesn't matter a whole lot. I think this might be the elemental weakness of a couple of the enemies in the early game, but really it doesn't actually matter a whole lot. For the arts cards, we want accuracy up and critical up. This is just to make sure that she doesn't miss any attacks in any of the early fights, and that she can do a lot of damage if necessary. Yeah, because she is actually used somewhat during these fights, so we want to make sure that she's equipped to handle that. Opening art for the skill ram, because we want that first attack to be able to do enough to KO any enemy that it hits, because it will actually be used for a couple enemies. Specials enhancing ram we actually don't need. We don't use any specials with Poppy Alpha, so you can kind of ignore these. But any special enhancing ram that we use at any point is likely going to use Vital Charge. And for the skill upgrades, we're going to want Hunter's Chemistry and Shoulder to Shoulder to increase affinity when using QT Pi. These are probably the most important thing that we have on her. Moving on to Poppy QT. This time we do have a muscle mod, and this is kind of important. This is going to increase our total damage just in general, so we want to have that on there. The element core is going to be dark. That's, I think, just in combination with Poppy QT's element core, which is also dark. The arts cards, we're going to have critical up and accuracy up, same as Poppy Alpha. Opening art as well, because she's used for like 2 fights, so we want to be able to just get that damage in there. We also have a dexterity boost because we can. Dexterity is pretty important. I think Tor is a little bit lacking in it, so we definitely want to be able to put this in here while we can. Dexterity boost 2 can be bought from the Land of Challenge. Specials enhancing ram, again, also not necessary for QT. We don't use any specials at all with her. And the skill upgrades, Hunter's Chemistry and Shoulder to Shoulder, again, as support for Poppy QT Pi when we're using her later on. The big one, though, is Poppy QT Pi, and this one needs to be pretty much exactly like I have it here. Master Muscle Mod for the roll CPU to increase damage as much as possible. Dark Element Core is necessary for the Ion fight. For the Arts cards, we have Accuracy up, we have Arts Boost, and we have Critical up, just to deal extra damage. The skill ram, we have Indoor Attack up, Swift Strike up, and Opening Art. Just, again, to deal as much damage as possible. Specials Enhancing Ram, this time we actually do want a Vital Charge 5 on her Special 1. We do actually use this one, possibly a couple other times during the run, so we want to make sure to have those. Affinity Max Attack, Pinpoint Weakness, and Specials Level 1+ for the skill upgrades. So that's all of that right there. And this is just maximized to deal as much damage as possible, because we're going to need all of that for the later game. The last thing we need to cover is the arts that each of the drivers have. Every weapon has 4 arts available, and you can only choose 3 of them. So we need to make sure that we have the right 3 arts chosen, and that all 3 of those arts are leveled up to level 5 for all of the weapons that are going to be used by all of the drivers during this run. So I'm going to go through each of them real quickly and just show which arts you need for each of them. So for Rex's Ether Cannon, you need Wild Volley, Armor Crusher, and Grenade Launcher. For the Aegis Sword, you need Rolling Smash, Sword Bash, and Double Spinning Edge. Again, these can be in any order. It doesn't actually matter. Just make sure you know which one is which. Moving on to Nia. For Twin Rings, you need Butterfly Blade, Gemini Loop, and Jaguar Slash. For the Great Axe, you need Brutal Blade, Bear Smash, and Rhino Assault. For Tora, for the Drill Shield, you need Spinning Cutter, Big Boost, and Steady Drill. For the Mech Arms, Pow Pow Cannon, Booming Buster, and Scatter Shot. And for the Variable Saber, Swooshing Slash, Speedy Sword, and Steady Beam. For the Cobra Bardiche, for Morag, you have Twisted Thistle, Blunt Force, and Lunar Salutation. And for Zeke, for the Ether Cannon, we've got Laser Point Bazooka, Burst Gunner, and Blowback Cannon. None of the other ones actually matter because we don't use any other weapons during the run, but you should definitely make sure that you have those specific arts selected and that you have them all upgraded to level 5. If you need help with that, you can buy weapon points from the Traveling Bard in the inn in Moradane, so you can do that, but definitely make sure that you have all of those. Alright, that's going to do it for all of your preparation. Assuming you've done everything as shown in this guide, you should be ready to go for doing your own run. I would still recommend watching through a run first to understand the movement, and make sure to follow my written guide which explains the full route. As for everything else, it's all in your hands now. Thank you for watching this guide. If you have any questions or suggestions, feel free to contact me or join the Xeno Speedrun Discord server to discuss. Please also follow me on Twitch, and make sure to check out my own runs whenever I'm doing them. That's it from me, and I wish you the best of luck in your own Xenoblade 2 New Game Plus runs.